thought maybe I'd try that to see if the afternoon attendance would be any better than it usually is. Have to try something different. You know, if y'all hadn't figured out by yet, it's hard for me to get up here. I'm not an orator by any means. I get nervous when I get up here. Lately, and I think I did a lesson real similar to this not long after we first began meeting in this building. But my thoughts have been such as wondering, once, when it seems like forever that we were wanting a place to worship at. A place, we outgrew our house real quick. And then we moved to the other location, which was no doubt a blessing by God given to us. And this building came along. And we all kind of breathed a sigh of relief, like, this is what we've been looking for. No, it's not the prettiest building in this town, but it's pretty to me, and I love it. But it was what we needed to be able to grow. It's really been a blessing from that standpoint. But can we just sit back and wait for other Christian families to move into this area? Or for other Christian families to join us? New families move into the town all the time. Do we look for those kind of people to be our additions to this church? Or does God expect more from us? I think we all know the answer to that. So this afternoon, I've decided to talk about a man that we all know by reading God's Word. And it's a man who spread God's Word to the lost. And it's about the obstacles that he faced and that he overcame. And there was a time here at this congregation where I could usually look down at the front of the building, and there's young people that I could address this to and say, these young people even know this lesson here that we're going to be talking about. But our young people have grown up. They're Christians now. What a blessing. But that man that we're going to talk about is Noah. So anytime that you ask even a young child, which we don't have a lot of here, they know about Noah. They've heard the story of Noah in the Bible. And it's not just a story. We call it a story for lack of something better to call it. It's the account of Noah in the Bible. They can tell you that he built an ark and that he put animals in the ark, and that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and then God made the rainbow. And they can tell you all about that. But there are many deeper lessons that we can learn from Noah. If you'll turn to Genesis chapter 6, I'm going to read verses 1 through 13. Now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with them forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be 120 years. And then this name here that I stumble over, Nephilim. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and that refers to Raphaim. But anyway, in those days, and also afterward, and the sons of God came to the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were old men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on this earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, from man to the animals, to the creeping things, to birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God, and Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth and beheld, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon the earth. Then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them, and behold, I am about to destroy them with the earth. Why was he going to do this? It says that there was only evil continually. Does any of this reading sound familiar today about what's going on in this world today? You know, you don't have to sit very long in front of a television news program where you see what the corruption that's going on in this world is. It's pathetic. You have wars going on in this world for various reasons. You have hate, one man for another, one country for another. Even our elected officials these days can't get along. It's pathetic. There was a time when men could come together as a group of men for a common cause and come to some agreement, level-headed agreement with each other on things. But it seems like those days have passed. Can you imagine, or have you ever thought of God on his throne in heaven, looking down upon the creation that he has made, of how disappointed he must be? You know, it's what we just read here, how there was only evil continually in the sight of man. What do you think he's seeing now? An even scarier thought, and I say scary, it really shouldn't be if you're a person that's ready to meet your Maker, how long do you think he's going to put up with this? You know, there was a time back in my younger days when dads and grandparents and stuff like that, you know, they would call it getting a snoot full. And once they got a snoot full, you could hear that strap of their belt coming out of them belt loops. And I mean, you better head for the bushes because you were fixing to get punished. How long do you think God is going to put up with what he's seeing in his creation today? I don't know. How many of y'all know what a cesspool is? If you ever lived in the country, you know, today we got a little fancier name. It's called a septic tank, you know. But back in the day, there was cesspools, and it was just a deep well that was dug, and all of your sewage went into this cesspool. And they stank to high heaven. I mean, they were terrible. The world that Noah lived in became a moral cesspool. Can you imagine living in the world where everyone was totally given over to evil continually, except you and your immediate family? Can you imagine that? It gets even a little more interesting. Have you ever stopped to think about how many people were on the earth during the time of Noah? I didn't trace this out, but there are genealogists that have. And if you can believe what they say, in Genesis, by tracing genealogies in Genesis chapter 5, biblical scholars believe that the time between creation and the flood was approximately 1,656 years. People lived a long time back then. And I'm sure if we had children that you could address this to, they would be able to tell you because they have learned it and had it, you know, taught to them so many times. How old was Methuselah? 969 years old. Due to these long lifespans, which gave them a longer time to bear children, scholars estimate that there were approximately 750 million to a billion people could have been living on earth at the time of Noah. And they were all given over to evil, except for 8 people. I mean, that's just staggering to me. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. They were the only ones. What a terrible, wicked world that they lived in. So what lessons can we learn from Noah and his family? Lesson number 1 is that you can do right when others around you aren't. Verse 8 says that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Paul exhorts us in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. Here he says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." Y'all ever heard that before? I know everyone has. Have you ever heard the saying, if you run with dogs, you wake up with fleas? You know, there's a bunch of little idioms like that, but they're trying to tell you, you need to be aware of and take guard against who you run around with. Noah didn't conform to the crowd. He chose not to participate in their evil deeds. And we too must be careful to choose our friends. A lot of times our friends are people that we, by reason of our work situation, a lot of times we have to work with people who are not pleasing to God, not living a life that's pleasing to God. And you have to work with them. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a part of them. You don't have to join in their evil deeds, no matter whether it's after work is over, doing the things that they do. You don't have to become part of them. You know that Satan was always seeking to devour Noah and his family. He already had everyone else, but don't think that he wasn't after them also. James chapter 4 and verse 7 instructs us here, submit to God, resist the devil. And what does it say after that? And he will flee from you. But we have to do our part. We have to resist the devil. Let's continue reading. Genesis chapter 6, picking up in verse 14. Make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with rooms, and shall cover it inside and out with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. Its breadth 50 cubits. That's length, width, and height it's talking about there. Who knows how long a cubit is? Nobody knows. Approximately 18 inches, isn't that right? I think back then they used a rule of thumb measurement from the end of your fingertips to your elbow. Can you imagine being given the task of building this boat this size? We used to live down in Corpus Christi area. They have a ship channel there, Harbor Bridge, all these huge ships. This ark was bigger than some of the ships that you see coming there. 450 feet long. You know how long that is? How long is a football field? How many feet? That's 300 feet. Am I right? Huh? My wife is trying to upset me here. I think a football field is 300 feet. 300 divided by 3 is 100. 3 feet is a yard, so I'm right there. You don't need to fact check me. And then add, it's unfathomable. One man was given this task to build this humongous boat. Noah didn't conform to the crowd. He was given this task, and he chose not to participate in their evil deeds. We too must be careful to choose our friends. You know that Satan was always seeking to devour Noah and his family. He already had everyone else. God told Noah exactly how to make the ark. 475 foot long, 75 foot wide, 45 foot high, and it was to be made of gopher wood with one door, one window, have 3 stories. God told him how many of each animal to put into the ark and to gather food for all of them. You know, sometimes we just read through this and never stop and really think about what all this involved. It's not like Noah and his sons could run down to Home Depot or pick up the phone and call in your order to Home Depot or McCoy's and say, you want such and such delivered. There were no such thing as electric saws. Where'd they get their boards from? There were no cranes back then, like we think of cranes, or even extension ladders. Many gopher trees had to be cut down by hand and made into the boards to build the ark. He had to make his own nails or pegs and his own slime to seal each board so that it wouldn't leak. This wasn't a fast job with lots of workers helping him. It took Noah, keep this in your mind, it took him 100 years of hard work to do these things. I cannot even imagine, you know, what faith he had to have had to continue working day after day, trying to meet God's plans, go by his plans, deal with the people that were ridiculing him. Lesson number 2 to be learned from Noah. Don't add to or take from God's instructions. Noah didn't ask God, why can't I use pine? You're telling me to use gopher wood. There's lots of pine around here. There's lots of oak. There's cedar. It's even closer. Why do I have to use gopher wood? Why can't I have more than one window to look out? Or at least 2 doors? That'll make it easier to get the animals in and out. God only had to tell Noah what he wanted, not what he didn't want. Noah didn't use the argument like many use today when they say, well, God didn't say not to do this. Noah knew God meant what he said and expected him to follow the pattern that was given to him. And he expects us to do the same thing today. Genesis chapter 22. No, Genesis chapter 6, verse 22. This is the end of what we just got through reading. Thus Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did. He was obedient. Lesson number 3. What can we learn from Noah is that we must teach others about what to do to be saved. Noah was called a preacher of righteousness in 2 Peter 2, verse 5. Here it says, and God did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. Noah must have stood out in the crowd. You know, you can almost just hear men jeering at him, saying, there's the idiot. You know, he's building this huge boat, which, you know, it says many places that people probably didn't even know what a boat was. They had no need to know what a boat was, because there had not been what we look and call rains, much less what was coming with the flood. So he stood out in the crowd, no doubt. People knew about this crazy guy building this boat. You think he was warning the people about this flood that was going to happen? He was. About how they were going to be, that there was going to be a flood and everyone who wasn't in the ark would be destroyed. You think he was telling them about that? They undoubtedly laughed and ridiculed him constantly. This brings us to the fourth lesson that we can learn from Noah. We can persevere even when we are made fun of and no one listens to us. You know, there's nothing that can get under my craw faster than whenever you're talking the subject of religion with someone, and you can tell right off the bat that they've got their volume turned down. They don't want to listen to anything you have to say, and so you're kind of wasting your breath. Noah never stopped. He kept on preaching and teaching for years and years. What a wearisome task when no one else listened or heeded his warnings except for his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughter-in-laws. Only 8 people in a world of millions and millions believed and obeyed what God said to do to be saved. That sound familiar? But Noah didn't give up. He withstood all the laughing, jeering, the mocking. He understood the urgency and what would happen to all those people. Likewise, we understand the urgency too and know what is in store for billions if they are not taught the truth and obey it. But yet, we let one refusal to listen to us by someone bog us down, hurts our feelings, gets under our craw. Can you imagine how the people in Noah's time felt as they were clinging to uprooted trees or trying to climb higher as the water kept rising and rising and the fountains of the deep were breaking up and the water was coming forth? Do you think they were wishing that they had listened to Noah then? But it was too late. It was too late. So it is with us. There's going to come a time when it's too late to decide to follow Jesus and to be obedient to his commands. It'll be too late. Those who don't accept Jesus and obey his commands will be wishing that they had listened to one day, but it will be too late. We must strive to be brave like Noah and look for opportunities to teach others, even if we're ridiculed or made fun of. In Matthew chapter 5, beginning verse 10, Jesus teaches here, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my name's sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets before you. This church, Comal Church here, has been greatly blessed by God. We're blessed to have this building where we have room to grow. But with this opportunity, as in all things, with this opportunity comes responsibility. If you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 6 through 9, there's where it talks about, Paul said, I planted, Apollos watered, but God was causing the increase, the growth. So then neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but God who causes the growth. Now the one who plants and the one who waters are one, but each will receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building. We got to truly believe that if we plant the seed and teach others, not to neglect them, but keep teaching until they grow stronger in the Word, and God will give the increase, and this church will grow. The fifth and final lesson that we can learn from Noah is that faith conquers fear. In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7 says, by faith, Noah, being warned by God about things not yet seen, in reverence, prepared an ark for the salvation of his household, by which he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. Noah was told by God to do something even before he really understood how it would turn out. But by faith, he built this ark, even though he had never seen a flood before. His faith conquered his fear. When God shut the door of the ark and the torrential rains had began, and the ark was lifted higher and higher, his faith conquered fear. When he and his family had to remain in the ark with the animals for almost a year before God told them to come out. You can only imagine what these 8 people saw and how they felt as they stepped out of the ark onto dry land. Everyone else was gone. Can you imagine that? 8 people on that ark. When the ark came to rest on dry ground and they were told by God, get out. And they get out and there's nobody around to meet you, to greet you. Everybody's gone. The earth had changed its appearance. You can only imagine that. Everything was starting over. And here we are today, some 5,000 years later. The world is heading back to the days of Noah in many ways. Sin is rampant all around us. There's so much evil in this world. But there will always be a remnant that love and obey the Lord. We must have a strong faith to conquer our fears like Noah did. We must be obedient and prepared to meet God in judgment. Jesus equates the judgment day to the coming of the flood in Matthew chapter 24, beginning verse 36. It says here, "But about that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son of God, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be." The ark was lifted out of a depraved world by water and transported into a purified world. And in the same likeness, baptism lifts us from a state of sin and transplants us into a state of righteousness and justification in Jesus. How do we know this to be true? In 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 20 says, "When once the long suffering of God kept waiting in the days of Noah during the construction of the ark, which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. Corresponding to that, baptism now saves you. Not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ." So, if you're here and you've never been baptized for the remission of your sins, you have not done all that God has commanded you to do. In Acts 2:38, don't put it off. You know, there's going to come a time when it's going to be said, it's too late. That gives me the willies just thinking about it. Don't put it off. Remember those in Noah's day. They had 100 years to obey, but they ran out of time. 100 years, and then it was too late. Don't let your time run out. And I'm not pointing at you. My finger's right back at myself. Those no guarantee of tomorrow or even the next hour. Let your faith conquer fear like Noah. And come as we stand and sing the song of invitation.